Okay, well, we're live, and welcome, Universe, to Game Nexus Live, our third podcast. And I don't know if we're weekly yet on the podcast, but we're trying to get some form of schedule going. We're almost weekly, I guess, sort of. We missed a week, but we're trying to get weekly content out to you guys. So tonight, joining us, as always, we have Stuart and we have Josh. And myself, and we got a couple of topics lined up for everybody tonight. As our normal format is, we have a video game related topic and we have a tabletop related topic to discuss tonight. So the big one on the docket for tonight is we're going to be talking about the recent closure of Gazillion Entertainment and the Marvel Superheroes online game that they developed, created, and ran for about 2.5 to 3 years, I think it is, and was recently just closed down on Thanksgiving. So there's a little bit of a backstory for that one. So I'll run everybody through that. So essentially, the game was in development for about 2 years prior. The Marvel license has actually been kind of an interesting one when it comes to video games, as far as that style of video game. So essentially it was an MMO. The reason why I said it's kind of an interesting development is that Marvel Superheroes MMO, little known, was actually held by Microsoft at the inception of the Xbox 360. So back in the MMO craze when World of Warcraft was running and EverQuest, and Microsoft had actually acquired the Marvel Superhero license. This is before the Disney buyout, of course. And so the plan was to create a Marvel Superheroes MMO, and I was very excited about that myself. It never happened, and the license to create an MMO just kind of vaporized, and it just never happened. You know, I think at that time, the company who was going to develop one created their own Marvel, or own superhero MMO. So anyway, the license just disappeared, and then this company called Gazillion picked it up. And that was exciting. And it was going to be for PC only, so a little bit disappointed, but still cool. And the game was going to be a top-down, not create your own hero in the Marvel universe, but simply a top-down Diablo-style game where you actually played the different heroes, you unlock the different heroes in the Marvel universe, and you purchase things like costumes, skins, and powers and things like that through grinding and all the fun stuff. Ironically, one of the developers of the game was on the original Diablo team. So that's why the game has sort of that isometric top-down view. So lo and behold, the game did really well on PC. Like it was a microtransaction-driven game that just landed well. People were buying up content, costumes, characters. The neat thing about it is they kind of, as new Marvel movies came out, they actually incorporated that content into the game. So you'd see like Marvel costumes, the movie costumes making an appearance in the game. So about 6 months ago, they released on console. And that got me excited anyway, because I'm pretty much a console-only player. And the game looked great. They revamped the controls. They put a lot of work into making this game fit for Xbox One. And it was great. And I almost bought content. And lo and behold, last week, I find out that the game is being scuttled. So we have a situation now where the developers have folded the studio, Gazillion. Disney has stepped in and scuttled the game completely. So whereas before I think they had given notice for about end of December for the game to actually stop working, Disney stepped in and killed it and said the game is shutting down effective immediately. I think on Friday it went down. So our topic is now we're kind of, and this is the internet, apparently petitions have been filed and there's gamers who are raging, wanting refunds, and they are crying foul. And the game came out 6 months ago on console, so majority probably console players saying, I just spent money on this game buying content and you've now shut it down. So what is owed to me, and etc. So that kind of opens the floor, and I'll just get some initial questions before I sort of counter some other questions. So Josh, what's your thoughts? Like, what's your thoughts on the situation? And then, of course, you know, on the whole concept of microtransactions have some sort of a tangible value to gamers.
Well, I guess my initial thought on it, without knowing much of the insider of what it was, is I wonder if the company was going down and Disney's like, oh, this is a dying ship, I'm out. Or if Disney going, I'm out was what killed them.
Well, I mean, obviously Disney's probably wanting to protect their brand. That's my first thought.
And I almost wonder if potentially, hypothetical, we're going to see a rebound, where slight bounce where Disney's pulling themselves off Netflix, do their own thing. I wonder if Disney's going to do their own and be like, let's protect ourselves and do it our way.
Seems to be a tradition of them doing that. Because point in case when, I don't know if you know this, but during the time frame with the animated show, The Clone Wars, when Disney acquired the Star Wars license, they scuttled the Clone Wars and started a new series on the Disney XD channel called Star Wars Rebels, because Clone Wars was on Cartoon Network, I think it was, or Nickelodeon or something. But anyway, it wasn't Disney's channel. So that certainly seems to be a possibility.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get back to you on the question about the actual microtransactions. Stuart, what's your thought on what Josh just sort of mentioned about the overall issue before we dive into the loot box and the DLC, the microtransactions?
It's I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, like just off the top of my head, that they would scuttle a functioning game with players, subscribers, and people purchasing the content just to try and redo it. As for like, the Disney being the impetus for everything closing down, I don't think so. Again, it doesn't seem to really make sense, and the article that I read preparing for this seemed to indicate that Disney's reaction was after it became apparent that the company was just crumbling.
Yeah, it's true. They weren't public in any kind of comments until the game had been announced that it would be closing. So they didn't come in and level it. The developer actually were the ones making the initial announcements.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with the game at all, but I would be willing to bet that the user agreement probably has some sort of clause about paid content becoming unavailable temporarily or permanently that may be able to protect them from any liability in court over this. I hope that, because it seems to me that this is a real knee-jerk reaction. Like, I imagine that Disney probably has the finances to avoid, like, the developer wants to close down in a month, right, Dwayne?
Yeah. Well, they were aiming end of December to kill the servers.
Yeah, and Disney wants to do it like next week. So, there's obviously a more runway to work with here than Disney is willing to use, and I'm hoping that the outcry will make them reconsider just pulling the plug, because I think, if Disney were to respond in a more sort of community-oriented way, with perhaps, laying down the capital to maybe extend the runway long enough to maybe restructure how it's going. Maybe it'll become a subscription thing. I don't know.
Well, there's two things that come out of the conversation that you brought up. My thought is here. So let me throw this out there. So obviously, like you made a point saying the game's doing well. We assume there was content being purchased and the game was being played. So I guess the first question is that if they had extended the game to end of December, we're assuming that they would put notification, right? Because there's no way they would continue to generate revenue during that month if they were to stay live. So my thinking is they would have announced that they were closing, nobody bought any. But to Josh's point, maybe Disney felt they could do better. So my wondering is would they even need to retain any of the assets from this existing game? Or would they simply just say, you know what, we can do it better. Let's do it better. Let's close down shop and either give it to a new company or just start from scratch as far as the game goes, versus trying to carry on a legacy product that wasn't developed by us. Is that sort of what you're thinking as well, Josh?
Well, see, I mean, jumping in there, due to the game being on Steam and everything, we can actually pull data on player count and everything like that.
Right.
This game was pretty dead. I mean, when it came like June 2013, it looks like that was their peak, and they didn't even have 5,000 players.
Right.
And I mean, going over the last few months, July, August, September, I mean, 800 was the high point.
Wow.
So it looks like this game was already like done.
So I guess
Are we talking simultaneous players or total?
We're talking the average players that swing on and log into the game. So when on Steam, when they click start and they're on there, it averages out how many players they see, and then it keeps track of like the peak. So when during that 24-hour period, well, they've got it down to months on it. You can also look at like days and everything. You could see how many people have actually logged on for like the most. I mean, going on October, they had a peak of 818 people logged in at once on the game. Whether that means they're actually doing something or just sitting at the title screen. Steam just, as soon as you start the game and it goes, you are playing, just like on Xbox, PlayStation, you see when it does a little pop-up and it's like, someone's playing so-and-so. They keep track of that.
It could have very well been a situation where Disney got their metrics and said, okay, we've hit the end of the road on this particular game or this iteration of our property. Let's close up shop. But again, Disney wasn't the one that announced it. So our thinking is Disney was oblivious to them closing down shop, or had very minimal information that it would happen right away, and then stepped in and said, okay, well, if you are, we're going to pull out now because we don't want this thing to get dragged through the mud. That's my thinking.
Yeah.
Now, so let me open this back. Now that we've covered sort of the general overview, let's talk about specifically the gamers who are out there screaming about getting refunds. Let's just say getting refunds, like all these gamers who are saying, I bought stuff in this game, you're closing the game down, now I want my money back, or I want some money back. Do you think this is, first off, is this a valid complaint? Let's just tackle that topic, and then I'll throw some other ones out there.
I mean, I'll field it. I want to say yes and no on it.
Okay.
And I mean, the only way I can explain it is I'm going to use Netflix in a sense. I pay for the service to use it, or in this case, get it for free or whatever, like YouTube or whatever. The content can come and go. I can't go to Netflix and be like, I want a refund. You took off How I Met Your Mother. This is unreasonable. I pay you money and everything like that. And I think that's the issue with virtual world right now, is that if you buy a game that is online or pay for the content online, I think to some regards, you got to realize that it's not going to be around forever. Mm-hmm. Like you can't go back and turn on Phantasy Star Online and be like, where's all my stuff?
Yeah.
I grinded this. I paid money for this. It comes and goes. I could understand if there was maybe a refund in like the last month or anywhere up to, they said the game's going to end on December. As soon as that announcement comes up, I feel anyone beyond that point should be refunded if they shut it down early. Mm-hmm. Because they had the assumption that they had 6 months, 4 months left, 3 months to enjoy their content. And then they suddenly just yank the plug after they buy something. I feel they should be refunded. The guys who have been playing the game for however long and bought the content comes and goes. You unfortunately got to say goodbye to your virtual content. You didn't actually own it. You're more renting it when it comes to digital stuff.
Well,
Stuart, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, and I think that comes back, segues nicely into my point about the inclusion of clauses specifically dealing with this kind of stuff, because there is this sort of sense that, I've purchased something and I own it now, but the immaterial electronic nature of these goods makes them impossible to truly possess in any meaningful way, and companies understand that, and they understand that it is dangerous to have a liability, to their subscribers, Like if you're literally saying that I will guarantee you that you will have this forever,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
kind of silly.
yeah, you're essentially destroying your company.
So they've got fail safes in the sense that they know they're dabbling in digital goods, which means they've got legalities to protect.
I would be interested to see if now I know that this isn't a big game. Unfortunately, I didn't do my homework very well.
Yeah.
Luckily, Josh pointed out that this was not a wow killer, as they like to say in the MMO world. I doubt that this will have a tremendous ripple effect, but I would be interested to see if there's any kind of or slowdown in the purchase of online content, and not so much jewels or whatever virtual currency.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that's going to stay roughly the same, but directly when you're buying a good, or like a shirt for your avatar or whatever, I'm interested to see if that will slow down.
Well, let me just say this: this couldn't have come at a worse time as far as the climate goes, right? Because I can tell you right now, not that it would, but I can tell you right now that if Star Wars Battlefront 2 was the game that we're talking about tonight, and all these people had just paid big bucks to get their loot boxes and their Darth Vaders, the internet would blow up right now from the amount of Reddit traffic and anger and petitions, right? So it brings up a good point in the sense that, like, to recap it, if you are peddling in digital goods, as far as, you know, a company selling digital goods, you're obviously going to have a fail-safe as far as your legalities are concerned. That's a given, right? So obviously you're not going to leave yourself a victim to having to give out refunds. But I think from the player's point of view, I don't think their mindset is fully entrenched, like Josh put, in the digital world content mindset. I agree. If I'm buying digital content, the first thing that I had to come to terms with is knowing that this content may or may not be with me for the rest of my life. Like I have a digital library on my Xbox. I don't own discs for my Xbox One at all. And I'm okay with that because I've taken that ownership and said, you know, at some point, if Microsoft goes out of business, there's my gaming. Like it's gone. And I've always been of the mindset that if that happens, I've probably got bigger issues than just my games being gone, you know, like, so I guess it's kind of a thing where you got to go in knowing that, but I think a lot of these gamers don't. So I don't really agree with any kind of the angst that is out there about, hey, I just bought something, unless the time frame that Josh has mentioned has been breached. So if you bought something post announcement, but I mean, if you just bought something yesterday or the night before they make the announcement, I don't think that's like going and buying an iPod and then all of a sudden the company goes out of business, Apple goes out of business. You shouldn't have your right to get the money back. You got stuck in a bad spot. Is that fair to say, or do you guys disagree with me entirely on that?
I would disagree with that statement there, because you said buying an iPod. If the company goes belly up, I've still got my iPod.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Gotcha. It's not hinged on the company's presence in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Because it's not a digital product. It's a tangible item.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll stick to my guns on that and say that for sure. Like if I make a digital purchase that's tied to a service, and that company a week later or whatever announces that they are unsuccessful in their endeavor, I hate it. It sucks. But there's no way they could have known. Well, I guess that's not necessarily true. But at the same time, you know, it's just that's the way it is. I made that commitment to do that. So I get it. You know, it's ugly, but I don't think these gamers are entitled to anything specifically.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, going with our chat room to Dylan there, agree with them. Most of them do have a zero return policy on a lot of, unless it's unplayed. I mean, Steam has it. I know I can't remember the hours, so I'm going to put out a number. It's like if you've played the game under 5 hours or whatever it is, you can return it and get it back. But for the most part, you're just stuck with it. Yeah,
that's right. I remember Steam had that because they did that policy to cover their butts when it comes to bad shovelware, right?
I thought that, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it really came to light when No Man's Sky came out.
It was before that.
I think it was before that, but I mean,
Yeah.
like when that game came out, people were like,
Yeah.
rage-inducing that Steam really started verbalizing what it is and made it come to light about, you know, what it is.
Yeah, because I remember there was some indie developers there that were basically selling product and people buying it, and it was terrible, right? So Steam had to step up and say, hey, you know, we have to take ownership of some of this. So
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the one where they actually were like, okay, no matter how much time you played it, you can return it, whatever. Like people were just that.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the game, but there was a game. It was like an indie developer that did it, and it was like really bad. Okay, cool. I mean, it is unfortunate. I don't like seeing this happen in the industry because it definitely erodes confidence across the board in any game. So it affects developers, you know, across. It just couldn't have come at a bad time with EA taking all the flack. Now, the silver lining here, you know, if we want to point to some good things, is I really do think that Disney, I mean, I don't think Disney has a game development studio anymore of their own, do they? They used to. I think it's been scuttled. I don't think they have a game development studio. But specifically now, it probably means that Disney is probably going to give us a better version of that game, possibly, which, you know, being a fan of Marvel is not too bad, I guess.
It's not a bad thing. I think Disney's going to come out firing out their own stuff and everything like that, especially with all the new Marvel films that are coming out. Marvel is like the top of the top.
Why wouldn't they want a Marvel MMO that is filled with beautiful loot boxes and microtransactions?
They wouldn't want it, but I think at this point, like I said, the peak was around 5,000 looking at PC. I mean, you got to think you can do better than that. That is
and that's probably where Disney's
pretty tiny.
Is, right?
Those are amateur numbers. You got to get those numbers up.
Yeah,
rookie numbers, got to pump those up.
They'll sell the license to Blizzard, and Blizzard will make a new MMO. There you go.
Or, you know.
Or they'll make an Overwatch clone with Marvel heroes.
I'm still wanting that StarCraft MMO.
Yeah, well, I think that's an development project still.
Or that Ghost game on N64. Come on!
Yeah, the Ghost game. So, yeah, go ahead, Stu. Yeah.
I just, nothing.
So definitely make sure if you're tuning in, and Dylan, thanks for the comments and tuning in. If you're catching this on the archive, make sure that you leave comments as far as like your thoughts on the matter. We'd love to hear your opinions. So switching gears, I'm going to broach our second topic in regards to tabletop gaming. So here at the Game Nexus, we always try and diversify, and our passion is spread out between video games and tabletop gaming. And so I've been doing some thinking, and I've been talking to my wallet, and him and I have been having a good conversation about how stretched he is when it comes to the tabletop hobby. And I got to thinking, yeah?
Phrasing, just
I got to thinking that I think a lot of gamers might be in the same spot. So basically, the idea is that we're seeing a resurgence in the miniature gaming segment of tabletop gaming. We're seeing Kickstarter just being all over the place. There's people who are kickstarting miniature games, getting licensed. I mean, there's miniature games being based on video games. It's crazy. It's just nuts. And being an old school hobbyer, I remember the time when it was just Warhammer and maybe one other game or something, right? And now we have so many that not only can I not afford all the games I want to play, I now can't even have any time to play all the games I want to play, let alone paint, build, and everything. So the question is are we going to see something where the success level of these games are going to start to dwindle, whereas you're not seeing any one game doing well, and the communities now are going to start to spread thin. So the amount of people playing specific games is going to be thinner across the board because it's now dwindling, and we're being spread out. And then I guess ultimately, if that continues on its path from a sales point of view, will we see a crash? Because I think that's sort of what happened in the video game industry back in the late 70s, early 80s, in that we had a lot of product and the quality levels weren't necessarily there and the sales weren't necessarily there, and we saw literally a crash. So that's the topic. I'm going to start with Stuart this time because you are our tabletop manager, head of content. What is your thoughts on the boat we're in?
So there's a lot of industries where fatigue is a real, genuine problem. And the main one that comes out the top of my head is TV. There's the amount of any kind of television across any of the multitude of streaming services you can watch is insane.
So you're talking about individual TV shows that eventually run out of steam.
I'm talking just the sheer amount of new dramas. There's there's like 200 dramas across Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and the major cable networks that are less than 3 years old.
And that's why we see some of them getting canceled or not picked up for renewal.
Exactly, right? But the reason that those exist is because they're being produced with capital that's being generated by a company, and it's being spent to make more money, right? But it's responding to the market when it's here, and it's hoping that it's going to continue and they're going to generate more money, right? So I feel like the way that most tabletop games come to market now is through Kickstarter.
It appears that way.
They aren't being generated by established companies that are applying, analytics and trying to predict where the market's going to go.
Yeah, there's maybe a handful that do it that way.
Like a company will do that, but they're also putting the idea out and literally just getting venture capital to produce the product, assuming that the public wants it.
So basically, it's an elaborate pre-order system.
Yes. So I don't think we would see a crash like with the video game industry, because there isn't, millions of dollars of capital just being shoved out into the market in raw product and development.
It's going specifically to the people who bought it.
Yeah, it's being poured from the public sphere into the private sphere via very specific
Quantities,
channels through engines like Kickstarter, probably not GoFundMe, almost probably basically just Kickstarter. And there isn't that potential for a disconnect. Like if you're producing a miniature game, chances are your initial run is already being purchased.
Yeah.
You're producing,
So let me throw to you with a different question, Josh. This is a little bit of a different take on versus the financial side. So we, like Stuart says, we have these games that are being kickstarted, but essentially being pre-ordered. So the quantity that's being created by said company is quite literally matching up with the amount of money they've received. So X amount of money allows me to create this much product. Therefore, I'm at no risk per se of going out of business because we fulfilled on what was ordered, right? And we have profit margins accordingly. My question to you is what effect is this going to happen when I am a gamer who just bought this product and I want to play with people? The community effect, because now there's so many of these games out there, and we have this community that not necessarily is growing. I mean, your opinion on that would be great as well, but say we aren't growing the community per se. Say the community is enclosed in the local community, say of 1,000 players, and those 1,000 players, instead of playing this one game, now it's spread across 50 games instead of 5 games. So what do you think is happening in regards to the amount of games being put out versus like what I just said?
Well, I would say like mine kind of branches across all things, like video games and everything included, because I remember back up to like Xbox days, back up to Warhammer days, when these things were created, they're created because someone was like, I have a great idea. I'm going to make something and it's going to be big. And they did that and it was wonderful. And everybody had to have it. Remember Beyblades when those came out? Everyone needed one.
The communities were all kind of, like all the communities huddled together. The players huddled together around one community.
Because it was a great idea.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we're looking at, Halo 5. We're looking at Pandemic Legacy. We're looking at Magic's 50th set and everything, because now people are like, okay, we need to make the money. And that's where Kickstarters, all these things is like, they're like, let's just make a new game. Well, it's like Monopoly, but not Monopoly. Or even with the figures, it's copying off of Warhammer with all of it, and it stretches us so thin because everybody's just trying to get the little piece of the pie instead of being like, I want to make my own pie because it's awesome. Everybody's like, I just want that little, my little sliver of it.
Because I think some of the challenges that Stuart and I are going to run into as gamers who play within communities, not necessarily myself specifically, but is that our communities, I use the word fragmenting. I don't know if, Stuart, does that sound like a good use of that word as far as the communities go?
Perhaps. I mean, what are you trying to describe? Like just the way that players are, you know,
the amount of people who are playing any one particular game versus, you know, now they start spreading in their wings.
Ah, yes. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Yeah.
It's like bouncing to, you know, Raging Timothy in the chats there. I agree, because there's so many. Only certain core games, Magic, Warhammer, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, whichever, survive, because newer games just fizzle out because you rush out there, you buy it, say like Sword Art Online card game, and you're like, hey, do you have it? And then none of your friends have it, so you're like, done with this hobby. No one to play with. Why bother?
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm starting to see anyway myself. I'm starting to see where, you know, there's so many of these games being created that it's becoming harder to have these communities clump together. The people are now moving in too many different directions, and I'm worried that ultimately, if we extend that far enough and take it to an extreme, is that we may end up seeing where, you know, the hobby itself maybe gets strained, and people are like, well, I bought into this, and now I don't want to play these games because I can't find players to play. And maybe in an extreme situation, we now have a potential of another crash on our hands, where this tabletop industry just gets swarmed with so much stuff, and none of these players are able to connect with people like they originally wanted when they thought they'd get the game, and now I move on to other things to do.
But good ideas, good products that are being crowdsourced will still be successful.
Yeah, because they know they're not in the market unless people have bought it already. Yeah, essentially. Right? Yeah.
But like, if I, you know, if you go on Kickstarter, in the tabletop section of Kickstarter, you're liable to find, or at least the last time I checked was probably about a year ago, you were liable to find at least one zombie game per page.
Oh yeah.
Like at least.
And that was a cash in, right?
You know, and that was sort of when the zombie fad, at least in the sort of fringe gaming culture, was sort of just approaching its zenith.
Well, look at the video games.
But it was starting to get to the point where people were like, I can't do this anymore. I've got The Walking Dead. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I can handle right now. This is just getting stupid. So I don't know, like, could you say that there's been like a zombie miniature game crash? Like,
yeah, well,
there's still games being produced. They're still being played, and people are crowdsourcing them, or they're being produced by an established producer.
So let's go far to the right, and let's see. Give me, and I'll go around the table on this one, and I'll even give you my own opinion. What do you see happening in another 10 years if the boom in this tabletop industry continues at its current clip? Or do you think it will continue at its current clip? What do you think is going to happen in 10 years with the tabletop industry as far as the amount of product specifically, and the community growth? Because some people are saying that we're in a renaissance age, and then others are thinking it's just too much. I can't keep up with the amount of content that's pouring out, and I want to play it all, but I can't. So I'll start with you, Stu. What do you think is going to happen in 10 years?
In 10 years?
Yeah, try the 10.
I'm interested to see if there's going to be a conglomeration effect. We've seen, like we've already talked about, certain companies that are buying up very small licenses from independent publishers, so they're just subsuming that into themselves. and just growing their company, producing the games, almost going in a reverse direction from Games Workshop, and kind of the traditional old world process where a company would start off with a product, establish itself, and branch out. Now these companies are basically starting out and just sucking in licenses and properties from other companies that don't have the clout to produce everything on their own, right? So like TT Combat now owns like 4 games that used to be produced in-house by the people basically who wrote the rulebook. And War Cradle just bought all of Spartan's titles, or properties rather.
So the strong will survive, and the little guys just basically saddle up to the guys who have the money and the ability to keep the product.
Well, I'm thinking, like, the fact is, producing a successful Kickstarter, the production required is getting steadily higher. Like, people expect an engaging video, like high definition. They want to hear people at the company talking about it. They want graphics, like possibly renders of what's being produced. They want a very high quality video telling them what they're getting.
They need to feel warm and fuzzy about the product.
Well, no, they need a certain level of investment. They need the visual cue that the company that they're about to invest in gives enough of a crap to produce a video, and that's becoming more and more expensive. So
right.
It's sort of, it seems like a natural evolution for companies to begin to conglomerate, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I find it kind of an interesting move, like where you had, a company like Games Workshop started off basically producing miniatures for Dungeons and Dragons, and then they were like 300 miniatures. Let's see if we can write a game that they can use all their miniatures in.
We're the ones that sells it.
15 years later, they produced Warhammer 40,000. And in that time, they became a dedicated game company, and it's just continued on. And they're producing more and more subsidiary games and licensed content based off of that. Versus something like TT Combat, who basically originally was a terrain manufacturer, laser cut terrain, and now has several full game licenses in their portfolio that they're basically financing.
Well, let me throw to Josh, and I'm going to put a spin on it for your opinion on this, Josh. Is 10 years, what's the landscape look like? But take what Stuart just said about Kickstarter and tell me your opinion on what's going to happen 10 years with not only community, but retailers who sell this product, because that's something I didn't really want to dive too far into as far as our opinions on the retail side of things. But 10 years community and 10 years retailer, what do you think the landscape's going to look like?
Ooh, what do I think the landscape's going to be? That's interesting. That's a loaded question.
Well, I'm curious because I'm going to give you my opinion at the end, but I'm curious what you think.
I think retail, we're going to see a shift a little bit, which we're already starting to see now. I know for stores around us, I remember originally you'd have to go to novelty shops. I'm sure people know which ones I'm referring to, where we just do the board games and everything. Like we know Walmart has your Monopoly and everything like that, but I'm walking into stores like Winners and stuff, and they have Settlers of Catan sitting there, and you're like, holy moly.
London Drugs sells Magic.
London Drugs sells Magic. We've got Pandemic there now. Settlers, right. Like all these games are coming in. So I think soon these games are becoming more mainstream, where it used to be the nerds were playing these and family games night was playing Life, Monopoly, stuff like that is actually changing. So I see a huge change in that. Kickstarter.
So are you saying that retailers aren't going to, like the game shops aren't going to be the only place to get this product, and you're going to see that shift over to mass market retail?
I think what I'm more getting at is that the board games that we thought were for the super nerds, in a sense, playing like Catan and stuff, like I said, like this isn't Life, this isn't Monopoly. These are games, Betrayal at House in the Hill, Pandemic. These are games that are more than just roll the dice, move your person, you're done your turn kind of thing. This is interacting, socializing. I think those are becoming very mainstream games where, if you looked at your board game shelf, your miniatures, your video games, it was very different than what it's going to be. So I think shops, like your average store, you walk into Target in the States and stuff like that, you're going to see all these board games now because it's not as super nerdy. It's more common.
Okay. So not to interrupt you about the Kickstarter side of it.
Oh, I was going to say, I think Kickstarter is going to die.
Really?
In all fairness, I've done Kickstarter and I've always, I don't know if this is general people, but just my feel, it's always been a waste. You get these people going on there going, buy this product, and they hold it up and they go, look at this. It's amazing. Here's my TV remote, solid build, good quality. You'll love this. And then you get it and it's made out of a piece of paper.
Right. So what you're thinking is the quality control level eventually, we're not talking about immediately, but eventually Kickstarter will see a decline because we're not going to see the quality of product on Kickstarter that we used to get.
Well, I don't even think the quality necessarily was there. I mean, Kickstarter originally was so good, but I think now everyone's just diluting Kickstarter with just, it's like a garbage sale, I almost feel. There are some legit Kickstarters, not trying to just kill every Kickstarter out there, but I'm just saying now it's being flogged with everyone who has an idea. They basically go like, I'm going to make my headphones, but I'm going to cut the cord off it. Give me a bunch of money. It's not in development or anything like that. And just give me money. I'll come up with something. And I find that's where a lot of Kickstarters are going, is it's just a give me money and hopefully I do something great.
Stu's going to have a heart attack if I don't answer his question here. What's up?
What? Oh, fuck. I mean, I think like Kickstarter is just, it's such an amazing platform from the point of a business requiring venture capital, because it's your whole investor portfolio and all of your market research all in one convenient little thing. If people want it, you will get funded. If they don't, then you walk away and you've only invested
the time it takes
maybe a few $100 in the amount of work it takes to get a Kickstarter page that looks professional.
I didn't want to go too far into Kickstarter, but I want to let Josh finish 10 years community, because I got your 10 years retail.
My guess is 10 years community is going to look exactly what it looks like now, in a sense that you're going to be divided on everything, but I'm going to call it now. I don't know what it will be, but something's going to come out, and I'm going to use fidget spinners here. You know what I mean when I say this, that something's going to come out, the board game, the miniature, the whatever, and it's going to be that fidget spinner where it's literally everywhere. You are nobody unless you had a fidget spinner between your fingers and you were spinning it.
So
YouTubers had it, TV had it, every store had it. I mean, every kid on the playground, teachers are talking about removing, it was on the news, like you couldn't look anywhere without seeing a fidget spinner. And I call it, in the next 10 years, some board game, something is going to come out and everybody's going to be like, you are nobody unless you've played this.
So you're thinking we're going to see an evolution of our current iteration of tabletop gaming that's going to be a so dramatic departure from what we have now that's going to be the shift.
Pretty much. I think for the most part, it's just going to stay in the lull it is. We're all going to be divided across the field with, you talk to some people and you go, oh, do you play board games? Yes. And there's so many board games out there. I'll still be talking to people and they'll mention things. And I'm like, what is that? I have literally never heard of this thing.
Well, like going back to my TV analogy, like think about all the times, you're meeting somebody new, like maybe it's a coworker or whatever, and the two of you have literally never watched the same set of shows. You're both watching like 6 shows.
Yeah, because there's so much content.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, have you checked out The Punisher? Which, by the way, you should.
Nice little.
I haven't actually. Nice little. Are you getting a kickback from the show?
No, man. Yeah. I've been watching, whatever on Hulu. I mean, we don't get Hulu here, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a proliferation of games, and I think it is good. Like, I tend to think almost exclusively in war games, but I think you're bringing up a novel point that is a very narrow focus. But if you include board games, suddenly you are looking at a much more heavily saturated market.
Okay, Josh, throw to me, and I'll give you guys mine. So throw to me like I threw to you, and if you want, twist it.
Throw to you. Ooh, interesting.
So 10 years.
10 years. Let's see if I can spice this up.
Because you know me, I have no shortage of opinions. So
here we go. I'm going to hit you like this.
Okay.
Now, I know when we had the movie theater was like the best movie experience, and we moved then to the whole home theater surround sound system, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we're going to see that shift with board games and everything in the next 10 years? Do you think you're going to walk into people's houses and like family rooms, living rooms, you got your theater rooms? Are we going to see that shift where gaming rooms are a thing where you can play your board games and that might be your selling feature of the house? Gotcha, will we get to that point?
So let me just look at the current climate, and Stu and I are sort of talking about this regularly, is that the current climate that we're seeing is you buy these stores at retail, the games at retail, and the game stores outside of Walmart and the big box, but the local guys are trying to pull you to them to play these games. Mm-hmm. Right, so you buy, let's just pick on X-Wing or Necromunda new games, and they say, hey, I just sold you this, please stay in the store and play, because if you do that, it's going to increase the likelihood that you'll buy more stuff from me while you're here, because you're surrounded by product, and other people will see you playing said game, and maybe they'll buy more product. Is that sort of where we're at right now?
I would say that it's pretty much where we're at, and it was kind of the same thing with, like, you know, using my movie theater thing was,
right,
you know, come to my movie theater. It is the best experience you can get.
Because the game store at the moment is the de facto environment that you'd want to play these games, according to them, right?
Exactly. This is where you go. It's the best gaming experience.
Right. Okay. I think in 10 years, we are going to see a shift where I think people are going to retreat from that. And the reason why I say that is we're seeing a trend, like you said, where these games are becoming sort of mass acceptance. No longer are these only the quote unquote nerds. The quote unquote nerds needed a reason to be social, therefore they, and I'm going to get flack for this, of course, but that's why they migrated into a more social environment, like a game store. Huh?
Said, don't do it, dude.
No, it's too late. I already said it. So do it. they would go into these environments because there was like-minded gamers there, right? And maybe they didn't have that at home because the parents didn't play, the siblings didn't play, they were sort of insular. So they would go to gaming stores as a way to become social with other gamers who like said games. To your point, I think because the acceptance of these games is growing, and now we're seeing mom and dad, brothers, aunts, uncles, such a diverse amount of games and age groups playing, that the social factor means I don't need to go into a game store anymore. I can stay at home and have board game nights. And I can play in a different environment without having to default to the game store, because people don't necessarily want to go to the game store if they don't have to. So in 10 years, I kind of think that we won't see the same format as far as the game stores go. I think the game store concept of playing in the store with you know, other people, I think that might dwindle. And Stuart, maybe chime in. We might be seeing that already. Like I don't know, but we might see a shift now where, unless it's a competitive event, there's gamers, we call them lurkers, but they're out there playing at home. Mm. And so that's my opinion of it. I will throw my opinion about the retail thing because you didn't ask me about that.
Sorry, hit it.
Yeah, I honestly, and I'm going to get flack on this one. I honestly do think we're going to see a massive shift as far as how this product is purchased. And point to Stuart, Kickstarter will play a role. If it's not Kickstarter, it'll be something like it. But I really think that, point in case, I've bought a Kickstarter product that's coming to me in March, and on the company's own word, the game in its entirety won't even be distributed to a retailer. You'll be able to buy the core set, but they're not even shipping individual SKUs and additional expansions and product to retailers. It'll be purchased directly through their online store. So I think what we're going to see is I think retailers won't be able to keep up. I think with the amount of product coming out from Kickstarter, from all these different avenues, that the retailers just won't be able to. Like, from a sheer buying power point of view, unless you're a big dog, you won't have the money to be able to stock your store with all this product.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's
I mean, you go into any retailer and, like, you know, they're able to stock like maybe 15 games, you know, and they'll have like dozens and dozens of different products for those games, and I'm talking miniature wargaming. But like, there's so many more games that it just doesn't make any sense at all to stock, because
yeah,
you know,
it's a guessing game as to what's going to sell. Yeah,
and B, it just looks messy, like, you know.
Yeah. So I think that covers the topics in its entirety as far as what I wanted to cover tonight. Just as we end this, I'm going to say this as well. You said something's going to come along in the next 10 years that's just going to sort of evolve the tabletop hobby. I truly think that in the advent of tablet technology and what have you, and connected devices, I honestly see tabletop gaming taking on elements of video games, in a sense where we'll have maybe product that will allow us to purchase stuff to enhance our game via tablet technology. I think at some point we might see tabletop games incorporating tablets where I can put proxy figures down on a screen or something, right?
I mean, we did see that. There was that game, and it is now defunct.
What game was that?
It was called Golem Arcana.
I don't remember that.
And it required an iPad. It had an iOS and I think an Android app. It used a proprietary iOS device, and you would basically use that device that was synced to your iPad, and you would click like your shooting model and your target model, and it would give you all the info and stuff.
Interesting.
But yeah, it isn't a thing anymore. Like,
well, I think we'll see some sort of hybrid. So keep your eyes peeled for the next 10 years to see if
there is already some hybrids out there. Just to quickly jump in, there are some great games that do incorporate iPad or your tablet, and they're great. I think it's amazing.
I mean,
definitely.
Not everybody has an iPad though. Like,
no, but penetration is going to get pretty crazy in the next 10 years.
Well, how it
worked, when they'll hand you a smartphone.
It was XCOM that I played, and I thought it was great. The thing is, it ran the timer for rounds and stuff where you got to do things, and it had different people, so it would let you know that thing, and then it would take care of the aliens phase, and it would tell you what they did and everything like that.
Well, look at the Imperial Assault app that just got announced from FFG. Right? It's now incorporating all the rule books and an AI opponent right on your freaking iPad.
Holy.
Which is cool, because now you get so many things where they can update it. They can put stronger computers on there. They can give you new map designs. Like, they can update on the fly. I even know there's tons of games that are starting to use it, which is frustrating because I don't have an iPad.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
And the game costs like $100, and they're like, "Go buy an iPad." It's like $500.
But I'll tell you right now, that FFG app that's announced, I'm so stoked, because this game, I paid $100 for it, and I've yet to complete the campaign, because I'd rather play cooperatively with someone and have. The problem is all the stat tracking and the pen and papers and all this. This app will literally let me set up a table, play the game, and all the stats and stuff that I have to keep track of on a piece of paper and a little baggie and all the cards and tokens. The game keeps track of it all. It's just amazing. So I'm actually going to further invest in Imperial Assault because of the fact that this app exists. So I think that's totally cool. If all games did that, that'd be epic.
Yeah, I know what's going to come, which the next thing is going to be, they're going to slam you with ads when you open up these freaking apps, and they're going to hit you with freaking microtransactions. you know it's going to. I'm going like full circle. They're going to be something like, "Oh, you want to play against a hard AI for $2.99? You can experience
the video game." the video game world's going to cross it back over, and that's a whole nother podcast, people. We're still going on content.
I won't dive deep into that, but I
That's a
will
deep dive.
point at Dylan's mention in the chat. I know I'm a little behind on what you said, but Amazon with their buying power to outprice any brick and mortar, which I think is nice because I'll just say on mainstream stores like Walmart, Target, and all that getting these games, I think it's going to cause board game prices to come down, or miniatures, because I will say it is ludicrous to walk into a store and you're like, oh, brand new board game, and they're like $90. You're like, oh my goodness. When you can get, not to say Monopoly and Life are the epitome of all games, but those ones are like $15. If we finally got some competitive with the big stores and it wasn't just the little mom and pop shops on the side, we could actually probably see these prices come down, and that might be a huge savior for this market. Because right now it is way too pricey.
And that's the problem is you do have this, and again, we're not going to deep dive on this podcast about the dichotomy between local game stores and that, but I agree, the landscape will shift to other avenues to purchase this product because of the sheer exposure. Amazon wants to sell tabletop because guess what? It's a big deal. I mean, you're right. Stu?
Well, there's like the games cost a lot. Like Warhammer costs more now than when I got into it in like 2006, 2005-ish.
Yep.
But the way that people of our generation are spending money is also shifting. There's a lot less money being put into, like weekend drinking amongst teenagers
Josh
who are like a generation behind us, or like a decade or so. What?
Josh would disagree with you on the weekend drinking thing.
But I drink when I game, okay? So sue me.
But I'm talking about like the people who they work, they're like, just on the verge of the actual legal drinking age. And when I was in high school, those people worked a job 2 or 3 days a week during high school, and then they would spend all that money on the weekends and go out and get shittered. And then they basically continued doing that once they exited high school and began working full time. Well, kids aren't doing that now. They're partying less, they're doing drugs less, drinking. Everything is down. Kids today are a lot lamer than they used to be, and that's because they're spending their money in different places.
So are you saying, are you agreeing with Josh in that we're going to see the online sellers force these local retailers to get their ass in gear on pricing? Or I'm curious about your point.
I'm suggesting that it won't be necessary because the capital to pay for the games will be directed from other things. Like, people are going to be making money, but instead of spending it on getting shittered on Friday nights, maybe they'll take that money for 2 weeks or whatever and go and buy a board game, because that's what you do instead.
So let me just close off this podcast, as I do always, by giving you a moral dilemma, Stuart.
Here it is. Here it is.
So here's your latest one that you're going to have to come to terms with. Stuart, have you ever purchased a tabletop game expansion figure piece of material from an online vendor when it could have easily been purchased at a local vendor?
Ooh.
It's a lot less of a complicated question than I thought I was going to get.
And that includes a local retailer ordering it for you versus just clicking on an online vendor to order it.
I'll hit it. I'll hit it first. You want what you're thinking.
The last thing that I bought online was I got in on Hawk War Games Drop Fleet Commander, but
you couldn't buy that in store.
Canada. Well, like when they were still a company, their distribution network in Canada was atrocious.
Have you bought an Infinity product online?
It was better.
Have you bought an Infinity product online instead of local?
No. Never.
Warhammer.
No, The only thing I've ever gotten online for Warhammer was Forge World stuff.
Okay, Guild Ball.
Nope.
I'm running out of games here. Necromunda you bought locally.
Hmm.
Okay, I think you're clear. I think you are a die-hard local supporter.
Yeah.
Okay, Josh.
I will say it like this for everyone who understands. I let my wallet do the speaking. If Amazon's got it cheaper, I buy it there. If Walmart has it cheaper, I'll buy it there. Or if the local mom and pop shop, which they never do, have it cheaper, I will buy it there. I go with my wallet.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I've ordered online, I've done shop, I've done all of it. It's wherever it's cheaper.
Okay, interesting. Well, good way to end the podcast. These are pretty deep topics. We could just go forever on these things, which is why I have fun doing these podcasts with you guys. So, like I said, hit us up in the comments. For those of you who didn't catch us live, the archive's going up probably tomorrow, and or maybe this week. I won't say tomorrow, but we'll have the archive up for you guys to watch. Please subscribe. We're going to keep doing these podcasts weekly as we can, and if we miss a week, don't hold it against us. More than likely, it's Stuart's fault. I'm sorry. No, it's just life gets in the way. Life evolves, as Jeff Goldblum said. Life finds a way.
Finds a way.
It finds a way.
I feel like I just got chucked under the bus saying like it's Stuart's fault. Like his life gets in the way. Josh, on the other hand, has no life and he's
Has
always
no life. Yeah, that's why he's here. He has no life to get in the way. And I don't know what my excuse is. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Stuart, thank you for putting up with my jokes. Josh, as always, I appreciate it. And this is Dwayne and the Game Nexus signing off.